Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at Bibles from different eras. Through the decades, we're going to see how Bibles have changed over time. And we're going to go from the 1950s, I have a Bible here from the 50s, all the way to what we're seeing today. And the Bibles we're looking at primarily are from Thomas Nelson and Zondervan. And I thought those Bibles would be pretty comparable to each other. But you're going to see there are changes over the decades, and it might surprise you as to kind of how the quality has gone from that time period to this. I would love to hear, though, what you think in the comments section as you take a look at these Bibles with me as to which time period is your favorite, and if you think Bibles have either kind of stayed the same, or have they gone downhill, or have they perhaps improved over time. I know I have my opinions on that, but I'd love to hear what you think in the comments section. So with that, let's take a look at Bibles through the decades. So the first one that I'm going to show is from the 1950s. So I think if we look inside here, we do have a date here that says 1958 on the presentation page. And right there, looking at the presentation page, you can see just a character from that era, the ornate design here. Kind of reminds me of some of the Disney movies from back in the day. They would have kind of ornate pages at the beginning of their animated features. This is a Thomas Nelson print. It is a revised standard version. And looking at the copyright page here, it does say it's manufactured in the United States of America. And the last date that I see here for copyright is 1952, which is when I think the RSV was completed. So this is an earlier edition, one of the earliest editions probably of the Revised Standard Version. And I'm not going to go through these Bibles in too much detail because that would just take so much time, but I want to give you kind of an overview of what they look and feel like, how they were constructed. You see this one, I would say it's probably called a genuine leather. It's very stiff, very stiff. The inside here, the liner is kind of a woven type pattern to it. And you'll see that, I think, in the first couple decades that we're looking at here. So this is a 1950s Bible. You'll see that the printing on the front is, it is over to the left. Although it's interesting that Holy Bible with Helps, that's actually centered under Holy Bible, but it's justified left in relation to the cover. The spine has some kind of minimalistic spine hubs. They're there, but not really raised. But it's a nice looking spine. And then Nelson on the bottom here. I'll try to highlight the ribbon from the different eras, just so you can see what that looks like. This is a single-sided, just a fabric ribbon. It's actually, there's not much to it. Kind of short, and there's one ribbon. Got the tail band here in two different colors, red and gold it looks like. Page edges are red, no gold on the page edges, and then here's the format. One of the things that I believe this Bible has that I think tended to be more common was illustrations. So here's an example, Joseph sold by his brothers from Genesis 37. So that is a 1950s Bible. This does also have drop caps at the beginning of the book, at least I see here. So perhaps at the beginning of every book, we're going to see that drop cap. And another interesting feature on this one is you have quite a few pages here introducing the New Testament. So you have like a long title page here, then you have the books in order of the New Testament, and then you have just the plain title page, and you get into the New Testament. So that's interesting. Kind of tempted to talk more about this, but I don't want this to go on too long. The back does have some things here that are just kind of, I think, introductions to the books. So, yeah. Yeah, helps to the study of the Revised Standard Version Bible, and you do have some book introductions in the back. Let's see if they've got some maps or anything. Oh yeah, here are our 1950s maps. And they're actually pretty nice looking. They're pretty clear printing here. It doesn't look muddy, but they are very much reflective of the time that they were printed in. Pretty cool though. So that's a 1950s Bible. We'll take a quick look here at a 1960s Bible. Now this is a Zondervan. I believe it's a King James Version. And this has a chain reference system in it and a concordance. They call it the Marked Reference Bible, so it actually has some different colors. Now, someone could tell me more about this if they know this. It might be related to the Rainbow Study Bible, the eventual development of that. This might be an early version of that, because there are different color highlights in it. But again, without getting too much into detail, let's just look at the construction and build materials. There's your ribbon. It's a red ribbon again. Now in this Bible we have a thumb index. It's interesting that the thumb index in the 1960s, on this Bible at least, went in different directions. And I think that's so that if you have your Bible open, you can easily see both sides of the index and see where you want to get to from there. I guess that's the reasoning. It is gold gilt page edges. Unfortunately, this Bible has, obviously had a lot of impact on it through the years, and so it's you don't really get to see what the gilt looked like at the beginning when it was new, but it was gold. And then inside here you have, as I said, those highlights. And the highlights are in colors, I think, corresponding to different subjects. So that's pretty interesting. The main thing, though, again, I think this is a King James Bible, so this is verse by verse. This has center column. But you can see the 1960s, in terms of kind of the overall look and feel, it's pretty similar to the 1950s. And on the inside, you have that liner with kind of that woven pattern to it. I'm not sure how to describe this. It's kind of equivalent to what we have for the vinyl paste down, although it is more textured, but it's sturdy. And again, kind of a genuine leather, I think is what they would call this. I don't see anything on here marking that, but you have kind of just really minimal spine hubs there. So similar look. In the back, this one has that concordance and some helps. Let's see if they have any maps. Oh yeah, so here are the 1960s maps in this. And actually, I think I like the maps from the 50s Bible, the Nelson, even better. But that's pretty cool to see what the maps look like in this era. The environs of Jerusalem. That's pretty cool. All right, well, I feel like I'm taking a long time on each of these Bibles, and I really want to make sure I get through this in a somewhat timely manner. So let's go to the 80s. Now, with some of these, I actually have the box, and so you see here the box for this 1980s Bible. Now, I didn't have a 70s Bible that I could find that really fit the style of all these other Bibles in terms of the cover and build materials, but this is early 80s. So this is going to, I think, bridge the gap between some of those old Bibles and what we're seeing currently. You'll still see the transfer of how things looked over time. And, this shows you the look of the box in the early 80s. Here's the Bible again, just kind of a stiff leather. However, I would say it's a nicer leather, in my opinion. It just seems a little bit nicer in its look and feel than some of those old Bibles we looked at. But I think this, again, would be genuine leather. It does say that on the back. All of these might be kind of a stamped grain. They're kind of mid-range Bibles. They do have a little bit of an ornate quality to them. Again, you see some spine hubs, minimal, but they're there. And the printing on this one is starting to get more elaborate. You know, you're seeing more on the spine here. The front, though, doesn't have anything on this particular copy except for the person's name who originally owned this. And then this has a ribbon that is actually very nice. I think this era is when I noticed some pretty nice ribbons. From Thomas Nelson here, you have a satin. Actually, I would say it might be silk. It really feels that nice, and it's double-sided. But it's only one ribbon. It's still kind of short. And I also don't think it matches very well. This is kind of a different color red than this one. This almost is a berry color. And this red is more of a bright red. Or a deep red, I guess I would say, not bright. So just different, and I don't think that matches very well. But you do have gold gilt page edges. You now have thumb index on this one as well, but all going in the same direction. And this one also has the feature of a border design. But now you're starting to see more of what we have nowadays with the paste down liners on genuine leather Bibles. It's kind of this vinyl material. It's reinforced, I see here, and this Bible is really well made. So as you get into this is the early 80s. Again, still very ornate looking presentation page here. It looks nice. And that's the format inside. It's quite similar to that 60s Bible that we looked at in terms of that verse-by-verse center column reference. But I would say there is an improvement in terms of legibility on this this Thomas Nelson here. So this is a New King James Version, and it's a classic. This format, people really like this. The back here does have a concordance. I'm also seeing here some other nice things here. You got a Bible reading plan, harmony of the Gospels, that concordance, and then the maps. Let's look at the 80s maps. This actually has a map index. Now these are maps. If you've seen Nelson Bibles over the years, there was an era where these were the maps you would see in their Bibles. And actually, it's funny, so far I like the 50s maps the best. This might be second place, I don't know. Those 60s maps, they weren't great, but I don't really like these. But that's what we have in the early 80s for maps. I can see how they're in some ways starting to be better quality, but I just don't really like the look of these maps. Anyway, that is a 1980s example, early 80s. Now we're going to get into the 90s with a Zondervan reference Bible. And I'll show you the 90s box here to go with it. So you see the design is starting to change, and this brings back memories for a lot of us, right? The 80s style versus the 90s. And the spine here has a nice look to it, but this, yeah, I guess it has minimalistic spine hubs. It's a very straight spine. Some would say that it's still too busy, you know, especially with the extra lines next to the spine hubs. Yeah, it is kind of busy looking, I guess. But that's the aesthetic from the 90s. The ribbon on this, again, is very nice. It has a very fabric, kind of a silk feel to it, honestly, not just fabric. It is double-sided. It's blue to go with this particular cover. This is a bonded leather, but honestly, it feels about as good as some of those early leathers, maybe not as thick. And then you have that vinyl paste down. So you're getting into kind of the typical materials that we've seen in recent decades. But this one, different color scheme. I couldn't find a black one representative from this era, but still has the silver gilt page edges but on a black one, I think you would see gold. So very similar. And one ribbon, again, presentation page from the 90s. I think late 80s into the 90s, this is what you saw from Zondervan, something like this. And then this has other records pages. Now I think the printing, though, really, you know, it's continuing to improve, in my opinion. I would say that's quite readable. Now, we're comparing certain editions. There are readable Bibles from all different eras, and there are unreadable Bibles from all different eras. But in terms of these kind of reference Bibles, center column reference, this is really nice. And a lot of people, this is really what they prefer, even over some of the modern printings. They really like the look and feel of this. This is a 84 NIV, 84 edition, and it is paragraph format. The New Testament now, this one has red letter. That 80s one, I believe, had red letter too. So let's take a quick look at the red letter in both of these. And I would say they're both decent red letter. And the back of this Bible, you do have a concordance. And let's look at the maps. And I think now we're going to start getting into the maps that we are used to seeing even today. Pretty similar to what we see today, but not exactly. I will say they're a little different than what I've seen in the 2000s Zondervan Bibles and the current Bibles too. But yeah, pretty similar. Just a little bit different looking, but pretty much the same thing. So that is 90s. And again, I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about these, what you prefer. I think a lot of it comes down to nostalgia and just kind of what we're used to in our past experience with different Bibles from different eras. Let's get into the 2000s. Now, again, I actually have a box for the one that we're going to look at here. This is a ESV, and this is from probably 2007, somewhere in that range. So now we're in the 2000s, and this is the box from that time period. And I will say, one reason I wanted to show Crossway, it's what I happen to have from this era, but also I think they really made their mark as the millennium turned, and they came out with this in 2001, the ESV, and then it's continued to be successful and popular. And you can see here, looking at it, you know, it's just a different style than what we've seen from before. In my opinion, starting to look better, but obviously we're biased because we get used to things in the time period that we live in. That being said, sometimes we look at things from the past and like it better, but I like this better than, you know, some of those other boxes that I've shown. But what about the Bible itself? So again, genuine leather, does say that here, probably a stamped green, nothing super special, maybe just a little higher quality than that bonded leather we looked at. The spine, you see what that looks like there. Does have very, very subtle spine hubs, but I think that there are some there. I can barely tell, but they are there. This is a thin line, which is another thing that I think started to develop in the 80s and throughout the 90s. You saw them, but was very popular at this time period too, in the 2000s, and even today. And if anything, Crossway made the thin line really popular. People really like the ESV thin line Bibles. And this inside, you're going to see, just has a certain look that their Bibles used to have. Here is the title page, though, and I think even in recent Crossway Bibles, a lot of times you'll see something similar to this, although I think they've gone with something even more plain recently. I think that's kind of perfect, though. It's a little bit ornate, but not over the top. You have some family records pages. Now, here's the format that I'm talking about. It is paragraph format. I think it's a lexicon type font. And one thing I will say about Crossway, the ESV Bibles, they really set a trend for Bible formatting. Just something about the look and feel of their Bibles. Let me show you something. I didn't have a 2000s reference Bible, but I did have something pretty close. I think it's like from 2011. It's a hardcover. That's why I didn't think it compared well. But I wanted you to see kind of the formatting here. And you start to see when they are printing their Bibles, they don't use many lines separating like you used to see on the reference Bibles. They did, I think, initially have one at the top of the page, but nothing on the center columns. I'm pretty sure that right from the outset, the reference Bibles for the ESV didn't have any lines that were vertical, separating the references from the Bible text. So you start to get that kind of modern, clean look that you see, and here's the classic thin line edition. I do think that the font changed. This is an older one, this thin line. And you can see how the lexicon font, I think they're both lexicon, it's just a little different. So this is more indicative of how they looked early on. And they had kind of these bold section headings as opposed to the italicized that they do now. And here's poetry. Poetry at this time still, you kind of had the lines broken up. Wherever the line would end, they'd just put an extra word or two on the next line if the line of poetry was broken up. This also has red letter. And this is really thin, this Bible, and the paper is pretty thin. So I think the ghosting in this can kind of be distracting. And they started to do something to help with that, which we're going to see in the newest Bibles, or the newest Bible, I should say, because we really only have one more, which is from the 2010s, but I think it pretty much encapsulates what we're seeing today. So let's just get through the rest of this. Again, for this one, you are going to have concordance in the back and the Crossway maps. And they're pretty much, I think, the same. Maybe the color looks a little bit different, but still the feel and look of them is very similar over the years. And so that's the Crossway maps. So thin line from the 2000s. And finally, we're going to look at a reference Bible from Zondervan from around 2017. And I think this year marks a big change. 2017, when Zondervan Thomas Nelson introduced the comfort print, and they really shifted to features that I think we've come to expect and appreciate. Now, this is a little bit higher end Bible, but it's still a genuine leather Bible. It actually says buffalo leather, but it is brown genuine leather. So in some ways still comparable to what we've been looking at, but now you're seeing here, this box is really nice. I think it shows you too, publishers are really starting to put a lot of time and care into how they produce these Bibles. We're kind of seeing a renaissance of Bible production, in my opinion. And even these kind of regular Bibles are getting some nice treatment. So you have a little bit nicer genuine leather, that buffalo leather. You have more pronounced spine hubs. Now, there are plain genuine leather Bibles from Zondervan and Nelson that aren't quite this nice. They'd be more similar to what we've been looking at. But you can see, again, what I said. They're putting a lot of care into their Bibles and giving people a lot of options. This one, which I think you're seeing a lot with their Bibles, has 2 ribbons that are double-sided. Now, I didn't really show in the last Bible the ribbon, but once again, it's just 1 ribbon. It is kind of a silk feel, double-sided. Now we're going to get 2 ribbons that are wider, which I think is becoming pretty common. But these are satin. I think Zondervan, Thomas Nelson, their ribbons are very nice. And it's great that they give you 2 or more sometimes. And then you have gold gilt page edges. This one is an edge-line Bible, so it is going to be a little bit nicer quality. Edge lined you usually see on a little bit higher end Bibles, which means they've tabbed the liner into this, and now you have a very flexible cover. But still, pretty much the same thing in terms of quality that we've been looking at. This does have a line bordering the text. And let's look at the title page on this one. Now we have, what I would call a modern look title page, in the sense that, we can afford to just print things like this, with a lot of color. And it's interesting to see as you get into this. We're going to see here that there's comfort print, and you really see some modern features. One is the comfort print, which is just a certain font style that's designed to be able to be readable even at a smaller size. I think this is listed around a 9.5, which is plenty readable for most people with this style of font. But the other thing you'll notice is it is line matched. And that is something since the 2010s, right around that time period, that publishers started to figure out and do. Again, with modern printing, it's easier for us to do that with technology that we have now with computers and the printing methods that we have. So what you see here is really just something that is clean looking. Again, no lines, no vertical lines. I think Crossway set the trend for that. Or maybe that just was going to be the design trend no matter what. But we like less busy looking pages today, and a cleaner look, and especially with that line matching, that's what you get. Another thing is poetry. With a lot of these Bibles now, they're breaking up the lines of poetry more with phrases. Now, it gets a little confusing because you're going to break up poetry no matter what. That's the point. You want to have lines of poetry. But sometimes you have to break up the line of poetry itself, especially with double column formatting. So now they're doing it with phrases so that you don't just have one word hanging off at the end there. So that's another feature that's a little bit different and improved. And again, you have the concordance in the back. I also notice this is a red letter, and they are also making improvements in their red letter, trying to be more consistent, which on the whole, I think that is the case in terms of print quality with the red letter. And then the maps. Now, these are definitely the maps that we've been seeing from Zondervan and Nelson for years, probably since the 2000s, but even in the 90s, they look pretty similar to this. And so they haven't changed them because they still work fine. So what are your thoughts on this? Have Bibles gotten better? Have they gotten worse? Is it a mixed bag? I mean, we see here a lot of different Bibles from different eras, and you can see there's definitely been changes. In my opinion, kind of going back here looking, I would say, on the whole, there's been an improvement. I do think that there was a time when there was a lull, especially in the 90s. There were a lot of cheaper Bibles, and into the 2000s. But even there were exceptions. Lockman, some of their Bibles from the early 2000s were some of the best, in a lot of people's opinion, that were ever produced from Lockman. But what you're seeing here is kind of the development, the transition in how Bibles look and how they were made over the years. And I would love to hear what you think about this. And I enjoyed looking at all these Bibles with you. And I know it's been a long video, but it's been an interesting stroll through history as well. So if you want to put anything in the comments about this, I'd love to see that in the comment section below. But thank you so much for taking a look at these Bibles with me from a Frisch perspective.